With so many countries technically participating in World War II in some way, shape or form, it's a shame that they just don't get any exposure. In this potential 5 or even 6-parter series, we plan to go through pretty much every country that so much as dipped their toes in the waters of World War II and provide you with the simplified highlights of what they were known for and what they did. To reiterate, if it wasn't clear enough, these are simplified pockets of information. We know that there will be country-specific political, social, and cultural context missing, but this series isn't going for depth, and rather, we're looking to give a general view on how the rest of the world participated in the war through fun snippets of information that we hope you'll enjoy. Anyways guys, without further ado, let's get into part 2. A young Soviet Union, still picking up the pieces of its bloody history, wasn't really keen in 1939 when this whole World War thing happened. They managed to get away with staying relatively neutral for roughly 3 years, until in the summer of 1942, the frustrated Germans attacked. Despite massive casualties, numbering over 25 million dead by the war's end, the Soviets somehow managed to hang on by their fingertips and push the Germans all the way back to Berlin. Fighting with the Allies under the Soviet Union, Armenia had one of the highest death tolls per capita in the USSR, with half of the estimated 500,000 being sent over to fight, never returning. Luckily for the country itself, it was spared from much of the destruction of the Eastern Front, as the Germans never did reach the South Caucasus. Much like its neighbor Armenia, Azerbaijan fought for the Allies under the Soviet Union and similarly lost roughly 400,000 troops of the 800,000 sent to fight. Because they were a primary supplier of petrol to the USSR, the oil workers of the country extended their work shifts to 12 hours with no days off, holidays or vacation until the end of the war. Yet another country located in the Caucasus, Georgia was the birthplace of the infamous Joseph Stalin. During World War II, it, like all other countries under the USSR, was worked overtime to supply goods to the Red Army. Georgia specialized in textiles and warplanes and ultimately sent over 700,000 soldiers to fight, 300,000 of which were killed. A partially recognized Soviet puppet state, Tuvan volunteers took part in some battles on the Eastern Front until the country was absorbed by the Soviet Union on October 12, 1944. Although no Turkish troops actually saw combat, Turkey's influence on the war can't be forgotten. A politically important country in the war, Turkey was more so a battle between the intelligence agencies. It was also a battle of resources, and one of Turkey's key exports was chromite, of which was a point of heavy contention for the Allies and Axis, as the Axis were in desperate need of it and the Allies wanted to deny them access to it. Turkey eventually halted its sales to Germany in mid-1944 and declared war in February 1945. Originally refusing to remove German nationals from their soil at British request at the start of the war, Iran went too far when they refused the British again at the sign of German intelligence and sabotage in the country that could have affected British oil factories. This scenario, however, never played out, as in a joint Anglo-Soviet invasion of the country, the Allies removed the problem leadership and replaced the government for the rest of the war. Despite formerly close relations with the Germans, when war kicked off and the Krauts formally allied with the Japanese in 1940, China backtracked a little bit as they had been fighting the Japanese intermittently since 1931. Like many other countries, China officially joined World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, and both the nationalist and communist parties fought together to repel the Japanese. Ultimately, both armies suffered over 3 million combined casualties, while civilian deaths numbered over 8 million, unfortunately with millions more yet to come after World War II. A de facto state that lacked any real recognition in World War II, Tibet remained neutral the whole time and sent congratulatory missions to both China and India after the war's end. Under the control of France in World War II, the colony of Indochina had a pretty rough time at the start of the conflict. When France was blitzed by the Germans, it transitioned to Vichy French rule. Then, as if things weren't bad enough, the Japanese took the reign, using the landmass to launch more invasions into Southeast Asia. Indo-Chinese resistance groups, including the famous Communist Front Viet Minh that was led by Ho Chi Minh, were used by the Allies to fight the Japanese occupation throughout the war, which, mind you, only truly ended after their government's surrender in 1945. Existing as a buffer between China and the USSR, Mongolia was essentially used as a gateway to send Soviet troops back and forth from the region. The Mongolians only really participated in one battle alongside the Soviets in 1939, which resulted in a victory against the Japanese. Their biggest victory, however, came in the fact that China officially recognized its independence by the end of the war. I know, pretty uncharacteristic, right? Home of the world-renowned Gurkha soldiers, Nepal was one of Britain's staunchest allies and fought heroically alongside British infantry divisions against the Japanese and Germans. Remember, in the words of Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, if a man says he's not afraid of dying, he's either lying or he's a Gurkha. The Indians not only fought gallantly in World War II, earning 30 Victoria Crosses, but their labor was the backbone of the Commonwealth, especially in the early days. Although their contributions helped push the Allies to victory, many Indians were subject to terrible working conditions and constant Japanese air raids, which resulted in millions of civilian deaths that boosted independence movements after the war. A neutral country that's in the British Raj in India a gift of 100,000 rupees as a sign of friendship. A rather opportunistic country in the war, Thailand and its nationalistic government took the chance to settle border disputes in Indochina after France capitulated to the Germans in the Blitzkrieg. This, however, was short-lived, and the Japanese soon after took over the country, where the Thai government then allied with them, declaring war on the UK and US in early 1942. Many Thais disagreed, however, and formed the Free Thai movement as a countrywide resistance that eventually overthrew the pro-Japanese Thai military government. Occupied by Japan from 1942 all the way to their surrender in 1945, the Malayans were brutalized by the Imperial Army and formed several resistance groups, with the backbone being the Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army. The British Borneo region, unlike Malaya, was still under control of, well, the British. Unfortunately, like most other regions in the Southeast Asian Pacific, the Japanese took control of Borneo in a typically brutal and efficient fashion, with the only small consolation prize coming from the fact that the Brits managed to destroy 2 oil fields before it was captured. As the dominoes continued to fall in the Pacific, the Dutch East Indies was now on the chopping block. After 3 months of fighting, the Japanese overwhelmed Dutch and Allied forces in this large swath of territory and were initially welcomed warmly by the Indonesians. As soon as the Indonesians realized that these captors were way worse than the Dutch, however, sentiment quickly changed and sympathy toward the Allied cause became popular. Over 4 million Indonesians died under Japanese occupation. The Philippines, being a northern region in the Pacific Theater, was one of the first countries to be invaded by the Japanese. Having close ties to the US, both the Filipinos and Americans fought with absolute tenacity, only to be overwhelmed by the numerically superior Japanese. Despite the surrender, the native population continued the fight by creating local resistance movements all over the country, which helped Allied forces when they returned to the country in 1944. Although only a single battalion was ever recruited from the native Papua New Guinea to serve with the Aussie and American infantrymen, there were many more natives that were recruited to form supply lines and help evacuate the wounded. These brave natives came to be known as the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels by Aussie troops, who always felt at ease when being carried out of danger by these men. We may have lost the Emu War, but we sure as hell put up a good fight in World War II. Aussie efforts were concentrated in the Pacific Theatre as well as the North African campaign, and approximately 1 million Australian men and women served in the war out of a total population of 7 million. The lovable sheep shaggers from across the ditch, the New Zealanders joined the war on the 3rd of September 1939. With one army division fighting in Greece, North Africa and Italy, as well as having decent contributions through their Navy and Air Force, the New Zealanders were notable participants of the war and unfortunately suffered some of the worst per capita casualty rates in the whole Commonwealth, with the only country beating them on this grim statistic being Great Britain. Directly supported the Allied cause by providing resources and around 2,000 Tongan troops who saw action in the Solomon Islands. One of the most contested territories of the war, the Solomon Islands went back and forth between Allied and Japanese hands from mid-1942 to almost the end of the war. Many soldiers of smaller island nations were integral to this campaign, as well as the natives themselves, 680 of whom joined the army and 3,000 of whom comprised the Solomon Island Labor Corps. Encompassing Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia, the Pacific Islands experienced their fair share of military action, massive troop movements, and resource extraction as the Allies gritted their teeth in pushing the Japs back to their homeland. As with most countries, the islands that were captured by the Japanese, such as Guam, were subject to harsh treatment including execution, forced labor, forced prostitution, and even concentration camps. Like many other territories in the Pacific, Fiji was used in the Allied war effort to house facilities such as airfields, barracks, and training grounds. They also had an independent force consisting of 3 infantry battalions that fought under the 37th American Infantry Division in the Solomon Islands and even the Philippines. Part of the British Gilbert Islands and filled with a surprisingly bloody history in World War II, Nauru was initially, in 1940, subject to Germany's most distant military activity, where the island was shelled to try and slow phosphate mining operations. Then, in 1942, it was occupied by Japan and was subject to heavy bombings and shelling by Allied navies and air forces. Definitely not a fun time for the natives. Yes, it doesn't geographically fit with the rest of the video, but I'm adding it in now because I forgot it in part 1. Pretty much Canada's annoying and weird younger brother, Newfoundland was up to the task in World War II and provided 15,000 men for active service. Thousands more also took up hazardous work in the merchant navy, and the country's ports were subject to constant attacks by German U-boats. So guys, that was part 2 of the countries in World War II summarized in under 30 seconds. So be sure to let me know how you guys are enjoying this series, and if I've missed any geographically relevant countries or territories, be sure to also let me know in the comments section below so I can potentially add it in part 3. And just before you go guys, make sure you check out all those links in the description below if you want to help further support this channel. Us history channels aren't really protected by YouTube's monetization system whatsoever, and it's kind of the Wild West out here, so I do really appreciate every single patron I get, and I also want to take the opportunity to thank all the current ones I have. Your guys' support means more than you can imagine. Thank you so much, because you're helping increase the quality and hopefully quantity of the videos we produce in the near future. So all those links are in the description below, including Facebook links and Discord links if you want to check them out. I know I'm pretty dry on Facebook at the moment, but that's shaping up to change soon. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.